Are you there, Feldman?
Yep, testing, testing. Governor Walz is a pussy. Testing, testing.
He sure fucking is. It took him what 4 or 5 days to save the city, to stop all this lawlessness and restore order.
I mean, it's tonight's actually not bad downtown, but like Friday night was terrifying. Um,
Yeah,
Not in like a sense of like your life is threatened sort of way. I mean, being in this industry, I've been held at knife point before for $200 cash from our cash drawer. I've had a shooting at a hotel,
wow.
and those things are pretty scary. But just the feeling of just not being safe and not knowing when like a cinder block's going to come through the window.
Well,
Um,
and Gary,
Right.
how did you handle being held at knife point? I mean, was the person tweaking? Were there bystanders that were doing something and he pissed off, or?
I was by myself, and they came in and they asked if they could rent a room, and I said, "Yeah, sure. What kind of room would you like?" And they're like, "Just give me all your money." And they pulled a knife out. I'm like, "Sure thing. My life's definitely worth more than $200. So here you go. If you want the change as well, just give me the cash." And took it in there.
All right.
It's scary when they do that. And it's just like natural reactions. Like, I have nowhere to run to. I'm kind of stuck in a little box back here behind the front desk. Like, yeah, I'll give you the cash. Like, here you go.
You don't have much of a choice.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. If you're not strapped,
Like the thing is, working downtown, everyone asks me, right now with everything going on, like, are you strapped? I'm like, I understand the whole better to be carried by, or judged by 12 than carried by 6 concept, but like if you're just a normal person not riding or looting in Minneapolis and you shoot someone, even in self-defense, like I don't see the courts handling you very well. Like,
oh yeah, they'll give you manslaughter charges.
yeah. Especially not being a castle law state, and even if it was, if you are just an employee and not the owner of the business, I don't even know if castle laws would have like affect you in that instance. We still good?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
so.
Sure.
Sorry.
But yeah, like, I'm just kind of taking a little break at work, fill everyone in what's like downtown. Now that they've actually used a little force from the National Guard angle, it's not really too bad. It almost feels and looks like a normal night. South Minneapolis and Lake Street, Uptown, like those are still essentially war zones. So I don't work around there. I'm in the downtown area. But like Friday night was nuts. Yesterday I was not at work, thankfully. But our property stayed safe. But around us, there was looters. I think I sent you guys the picture of the map, like a block away from me on Friday.
Right, just around the corner.
And it's just people are upset, and they rightfully should be. Don't get me wrong. Like everyone should be pissed off at what happened. Did we go a little too far on it? Yeah, I believe so. I mean, correct. If someone disagrees, tell us if we're wrong. But I think the looting, the pillaging, the taking the opportunity to shoot. There's been a lot of stabbings and gunshots outside of the main areas of this kind of stuff, and I feel like everyone's just taking advantage of the situation to commit crimes. I shouldn't say everybody. That's a pretty bad generalization. Pretty blanket statement. I don't mean. But the people who were going to commit the crimes regardless, I feel like are now a little more blanketed and have the ability to do something because the lights not there. I was watching a news channel earlier, and I watched a cameraman get arrested, and they were talking some other things down over on Lake Street, and a girl got hit in the eye with a rubber bullet, and they had to get a pickup truck out there to put her in and take her up to Abbott because they couldn't get a hold of any medical services. I heard that last night. Over in the 5th precinct, the fire, all dispatch calls were told you're on your own, whether it's fire department, ambulance, law enforcement. So I'm definitely one to, not feel bad for the government or feel bad for the state. But I do believe that Walz was in the right tonight to use some force to kind of contain the situation just because it's affecting businesses, the people, everything like that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he needed to do something. There was just total lawlessness for days. I mean, the whole city burning, 170 buildings in one night.
Yep.
How do you let
that was
that
just
happen?
St. Paul, I think. I think that was
just St. Paul.
Yeah. Which that got hit really hard 2 nights ago and last night. Yeah, it's bad. And, if we lived in a society without this kind of government protection, it'd be, and I don't even know if protection is the right word, but if we lived in a different society where we weren't so reliant on government, I don't think we'd be making the calls of force that we see now. But it's just kind of the way things work. You have to use it. Whether you agree with the state and the power and the monopoly of violence or not, you have to use it at this point.
Absolutely. I mean, that's kind of the argument too that I think is the commonsensical argument is you've already paid, whether, your earnings got stolen from you and whatnot through taxation, it's already paid for. So why wouldn't they come and just focus on production? But it's a PR thing with Walz and everybody, because Walz could have came out and said, you know what? Business owners, lock and load. If somebody tries to loot your store, you will be legally protected and defended in shooting them and using lethal force back. But he didn't come out and say that. He just kind of beat around the bush.
That was something that crossed my mind is he calling on the citizens? Like, sometimes it almost seemed like that he would ask the citizens to step in, but obviously you can't do that because that guy got arrested for defending his store. So
yeah, that John Ripple guy or whatever.
Yeah,
Cadillac Pond.
I mean, it was just an allegation. Whether he did or not, who knows? But regardless, he was arrested before the officer was in this whole thing.
Exactly. That's what's really messed up is because he was. Yeah. If it is true that he did indeed shoot a looter, well then he's 100% justified and he should have never been arrested. But when he was arrested faster and more quickly than Derek Chauvin was.
So here's how it kind of works that I learned from my permit to carry class, as far as it goes with like the arrests and stuff like that. Like, even if you're within your legal rights to, defend yourself and shoot someone, you're still going to go to jail for a little bit. You're still going to be, held up, and you have to go to court and prove your innocence, sort of. Maybe not prove your innocence, but justify your self-defense. So I don't think there's any case where someone just shoots someone and good job, they let it go. You defended yourself. Yeah. Maybe there are, but from what I understand, from what I was taught, was that you're going to go through the battle, but if you are justified, most of the time you will, get through. You can't just shoot someone to defend yourself, and like I said, the cops come say good job on that, and then they walk away.
Definitely, and it goes back to the not to like make a big deal about this, but the George Zimmerman and the Trayvon Martin case. Because George Zimmerman, whether or not somebody believes he was justified, he claimed he was a self-proclaimed neighborhood watchman, right? And so if you put yourself in that position, wouldn't you want to wear a body camera? If that was your sole, like that was what you were going to do for the night. You weren't going to go out, hanging out, dancing with your buddies or anything, or go out and get drunk. You were just going to be a neighborhood watchman.
What year was that? Like 2012?
Somewhere around there, yeah.
It was a long time ago.
And think about
body cameras were big, actually, before they were like.
Well, absolutely. Well, but he still could have worn one. I mean, they weren't that expensive for basic models. But even the amount of time even police officers and somebody like George Zimmerman, who's a self-proclaimed neighborhood watchman, would save in courts by just having video footage of what happened and what transpired.
Yeah,
I mean that's a huge deal. So to think that somebody can legally defend themselves and their lives and their properties, but if they don't have video footage or anything, it's scary because the process is going to get dragged out, and there's a good chance that if you don't make a good enough case or you don't have a good enough lawyer, but you did the right thing in defending yourself, you're going to prison.
Right.
I mean, look at the flip side though. Like, how many times are there like straight up murders that like you can't prove the same thing? How many murderers walk away because they didn't have, not saying, that's always right or always wrong, because that's such a gray area to justify when the taking another life is, redeemable. That's, one of the reasons I've never actually purchased my own handgun, even though I have my permit to carry, is because I never want to be in a situation where I have to make that decision on the spot.
For sure.
And it's tough.
Well, and any time, even if you are in a situation like that, when there's any amount of emotion involved that can influence that decision, it just doesn't help. Because when you make decisions when you're in the heat of the moment, it's usually just, it doesn't
look at the training these police officers must have had to been through, that they're out there being shot at and not one shot live ammunition's been returned. Like, I can't imagine a situation where you're being shot at and someone wants you dead and you can't return fire, and the fact that you can hold yourself to not do that. Like, that's, I'm not one of the cops. That's impressive.
Definitely. And it's always an interesting conversation to have when it comes to like non-lethal projectiles, like how big are the rubber bullets, tear gas and everything. If you fire into crowds to disperse, if they're not being violent, kind of the ethics of that. Because the police today were moving from the 5th Precinct to Lake Street, as I understand it. That's what Minneapolis Crime Watch, TC Crime Watch, said on Twitter. Mm-hmm. And they were firing tear gas into peaceful crowds, which I don't know. I mean, it's a trade-off, really, because if they're affecting, EMTs from getting to certain places that, require help, well, then it becomes an issue of life or death for those individuals in that particular damaged area if they can't get help.
Yeah.
So back to the emotion side of it, just some things that I've seen the last couple of days, not in person because I've kind of been either not downtown like a smart person or stuck in my place of work. I guess you don't know the scenario, but like I saw a video yesterday of like a state patrol car driving by and just like randomly spraying people, just like spraying maces they're driving by. People in the video at the time weren't doing anything to warrant that. No. I mean, the whole arresting media thing. And if you've seen the two main videos, the one from WCCO tonight and the one from CNN yesterday, like they did what they were supposed to and they announced their media. They did everything they're supposed to. And it's just not really a good look anytime something like this is happening. You're arresting media, but not people causing the problems that media is there for.
And they were trying to get out of the way and asking, where would you like us to go? Like, what should we do? And they weren't allowed to be the press. They didn't have the freedom to be journalists. And that was troubling. As much as I hate CNN, I have issues with them violating the First Amendment. I mean, would that not be a violation of that? Am I wrong there?
I mean, a lot of things here are violating the First Amendment with the right to peacefully protest and people, being dispersed. I'm pretty sure curfew laws violate. I mean,
well, then that's where it gets tricky because how much of it's peaceful and how much of it is burning down the entire fucking city.
And also to go along with that, Ryan, is like how do you define peaceful? It's kind of this gray chasm because if they're screaming and throwing a few rocks, but you're shooting tear gas back at them, and you're pepper spraying them and shooting these big ass rubber bullets. I mean,
they're just driving by. Sorry, go for it.
So, do you guys feel that blocking freeways is a peaceful protest? Because that's one thing I've kind of been torn on because I see all the videos. 35Ws hit really hard, and then 394 was yesterday right outside of Minneapolis, over by South. Like they're causing problems, and before all this I would have said no, it's not a peaceful protest, but like compared to what they could be doing to what they are doing, like now I lean more on the side like yes, you're inconveniencing people majorly and you're risking your own safety, but is it peaceful? That's a great question, Mitch, so you asked it because there's so many things you ask like that.
And if nobody's throwing, especially on an overpass, if nobody's throwing bricks or stones, that's another big one when somebody blocks or they peacefully protest but they block a freeway or a highway. Obviously you don't want to hinder transport, but if there are so many people blocking a highway, it's one thing. But I think in Seattle we saw a video, Seattle or Portland, I believe it was Seattle, there was a highway that was not just being blocked, but those walking were walking against oncoming fucking traffic. That's the most fucked up thing just from like a self-preservationist perspective. Walking into oncoming traffic.
Some lawyers are licking their chops in this.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
The ACLU is probably going to just make it rain.
Okay, so one more thing before I leave, because I do have to get back to work here. I appreciate you guys having me on. This is really cool that we can get in with this little system here.
Definitely.
Just on the talking about the peaceful protesters, your First Amendment rights, and kind of just the thought I had was, just because you're associated with a group where if there's 100 people blocking a bridge and 20 of them are throwing bricks off and the other 80 aren't being violent, if you disperse that and you spray tear gas and stuff, are you violating someone's First Amendment rights if they're not doing anything but they're associated with the group or an organization that is? How do you handle that? That's
where it gets tough. And it's just too collective. You know what I mean? When we get into the down and dirty on these issues, it's too collective because if somebody in a crowd fires on a precinct, live rounds, well, you're not going to be able to tell who fired it if they're in the fucking crowd. And they don't have a long rifle and they're standing out. Right. So what do you do?
Are you guilty by association or guilty as an individual for your actions? I don't know.
Yeah. On the same thing though, if you're, if the same thing could apply to the Second Amendment, like guilty by association, just because if somebody in your organization or, someone just like you, per se, it does something that commits a crime, but you haven't, and you lose your rights based off it, we'd be arguing that. But so I don't know. It's so tricky to do with the right thing, the constitutionally correct thing is, and do what needs to be done to maintain order and peace.
I mean, I think the problem that we're having. Individual actions. Just look at with the surveillance that we have today and the tracking of people with facial recognition and all of that. And I know a lot of people are wearing masks, but you can still track people down. Like they say that all it takes is the eyes, really. They can see who you are just through the eyes. So I just don't see how we weren't able to keep track of some of this stuff, having all this technology available. What are we doing? Like, are we really blowing this much money in government and they aren't at all like using the technology? I know they have it. So why are we using it?
But kind of the same, deal with that. Like, say you can identify the one person in this crowd that has the firearm that's shooting it. And, like, if you waste time and resources to, and when you're talking about firearms, like, you've, few seconds to make decisions. And are you going to try and get into that middle of the crowd and get to that person for the shoot anything else? Are you going to disperse the entire crowd because, it's quicker?
Oh, no.
Mm-hmm. Can you take the time to use your surveillance to find who that person is before anything else happens?
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, and a lot of the gunshots have come days later. They could have stayed on top of these fires, but it seems like they just let them go.
Like, a lot of people are criticizing, leadership here, and they definitely deserve it. Don't get me wrong. But like I said a bunch of times in our private chats, the decisions they have to make aren't easy ones right now. Like,
I know. And I listened to the police scanner for hours straight. And like the first night when the AutoZone first started on fire and he said, oh, it's a minor fire. Like, they didn't think it was that big of a deal at the time because they were getting pushed from this direction, and this direction. No, I get you. I get it. But it just seems like with the technology we have, there's still some sort of surveillance and some sort of record keeping that we could have throughout this whole thing. I mean, I know that seems like a mass surveillance state, but it's like the laws already are in place. We have the technology, and we have a bunch of thugs coming from who knows where. We should probably be keeping track of this so that way we can go over it once the dust settles and then track down the worst actors in the whole thing, because that's who we arrested. We arrested the most threatening officer of the four. We go after the most lethal of the protesters, the ones that started the most shit. The guy with the umbrella and the gas mask and the hammer smashing windows. Like, figure out who the fuck is that guy.
Yeah, they definitely have the technology to. They have the technology to do it, of course, but those are the questions we should be asking. Is that technology being applied consistently? Obviously,
I don't think it is.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
what did you say, Feldman?
You go on my Twitter and go look at the tweets I've sent and replies, because I did a little bit of a trolling job on someone's comment about that being a police officer in St. Paul. And I partially mean what I said. Some of it is trolling, but if you want a good read in the reactions, I might delete it soon just because it's getting pretty heated in there, and I don't want to associate with that. But I do have to go, boys. Thanks for having me.
Keep fighting a good fight. Thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, we'll do this again sometime.
Minneapolis. I don't know. I'm very conflicted seeing this. Like, these people are on their own property. I wanted to have order restored, but when people, like, we put this side by side, right? Like, let's think about this. The few days before here, just chaos in Minneapolis, right? Just buildings on fire. Everything's just
cop cars smashed. Super sad stuff.
It seems like the end of the world, right? I don't know if that's what the end of the world would be like. Some sort of dystopian chaos, right? Then you get this. days later, there's just people standing in their own yard and they get fucking blasted.
No, there's more.
Blasted. You'll see.
Look at
On their own
this.
private property.
They just keep coming.
Go! Go inside! Get inside! Get inside! Get inside! Get in your house now! Let's go! Light him up! Go inside
Light
now!
him up.
Get in the house!
Get in, get in, get in, get in, get in, get in. Get in.
Oh, God, that hurt. You
Are you okay?
right on the fucking crotch.
Are you okay? You got hit?
I'm good. They're fucked for that, dude. What?
Okay.
So
No, there's more.
this is how Minneapolis decides to respond. City's on fire, chaos, do nothing, stand down. Don't want to make things worse, but we're going to shoot at people that are standing on their own property. We're going to tell them they have to go inside their own homes. I don't really know what curfew is. I guess you have to be inside your own four walls. You have to be inside your own property. Like, you can't just be on your property. Like, could you be hanging out in your backyard, or is that
just
unacceptable?
chilling on your just chilling on your porch because
Those people
like,
were on the porch.
Exactly, they were on their porch, and it comes down like what you said. Do you really have to be inside walls on your own private property? Because the police just shot them and they weren't threatening anybody.
Walz wants you behind walls.
Cash money.
I don't know. That's just what it seemed.
Pretty much. I mean,
like. I don't know.
What it was such. It's like he was almost. He was probably in sweatpants and a sweatshirt when he thought about that. He's like, yeah, just eating a sandwich. Yeah, we'll give him a curfew, 8 to 6. We'll see what happens. With no plans in place.
Yeah,
just casual about it.
We'll see.
Yeah, we'll use the force of the state to, could essentially pop back against, for the most part, peaceful protesters and see what happens. And of course, that officer that fired was that paint canister onto the private property.
Yeah.
He's not going to face any charges. He was covered in a mask as well. He was all in tactical gear and everything.
Yeah.
So we're not going to see anything.
How do they just roll with a big fucking group? Like, I get that they were saying they were outnumbered, but they are much more heavily equipped. Like, do they have to be 1-to-1 with just some, dudes with gym shorts as they're in full fucking riot gear and all the tactical equipment that they have and the training? Like, are they really unmatched for all these dudes in gym shorts?
Yeah, it's definitely overkill. I mean, they're, again, just chilling, trying to observe the scene. And if they hadn't been recording, then, you know what? Like, what would they have said happened? It would have been their word against the police, but now we have evidence that, of course, they violated private property rights and they threatened their lives when they weren't doing anything. And nothing's gonna come from that. So,
yeah, I don't know. I think this whole thing's backwards. Just the response of the city has just been backwards, but people are praising it up and down.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how you can praise this. It makes no sense to me.
Yep.
The city's fucking gone. I haven't seen it, but from the videos that I see, there's a lot of it that's just fucking destroyed.
Yeah.
And, I mean, 1-2 blocks. How many blocks got fucking burnt? Just scorched.
Oh,
like,
God.
if you want to piece it together, maybe not whole blocks got scorched.
What was the
number
worst?
of
Was
buildings?
Was it 38th and Lake Street, somewhere around there, like businesses around that particular vicinity where it looks war torn?
Yeah, there's somewhere it just looks awful. Some of the vehicles that just burned out. No stopping until there was nothing left to burn, and it's just this husk that's left over. These vehicles.
Yeah,
it
just the gray dust and all the particulate matter too. That's another thing. Is after these fires, the particulate matter that people are going to be breathing in, the people who are trying to clean up or maybe fix up their businesses and try to get them running within 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah,
man, I'm sure. I'm sure there's going to be like a public health report that's semi-accurate.
Yeah, right. Think of the coronavirus hit that all these businesses just took, and now this. You get hit by all these people just destroying your property. Not only were you struggling financially, just through the lack of sales, now your whole establishment is just fucked because it's destroyed.
It was the final nail in the coffin, but it was more like a stake.
You're struggling financially, and your whole property is ruined, so there's no way for you to try to restore your finances.
I think what I would have done if I was a bar or restaurant owner...
it's fucked.
If I was a bar or restaurant owner in those very volatile and what turned violent areas, I would just hide out, but still kind of be inside, like being able to observe the front of the store. And whoever looted, as long as they were facing me, because like Gary was saying earlier in the episode that Minnesota is not a castle doctrine or castle law state, I would have just shot them. But obviously hid, but you don't know when it's going to hit. You don't know when that wave's going to come, but you kind of want to be there when it does. So if you really want to defend your fucking property and you can't get out of the city, that's your livelihood. Business owners have poured their life savings into businesses.
Right.
It doesn't matter if it's a bar, restaurant, antique, decor store, whatever.
Oh, yeah. They definitely pour in a lot. Then apparently it's being started by white supremacists. We need to dive into this here. So I'm just going to pull up what's trending on Twitter here.
Can we watch the Dallas video quick?
The Dallas video? Oh my god. I don't even know if we should show that.
Yeah, that's pretty fucked. I mean, hopefully
That's so graphic, dude.
Hopefully it doesn't get banned on YouTube, but I mean, yeah, we don't have to show it. Basically, all right, so a white dude with a sword chases after a group of black people.
We'll just warn people. But yeah, you can explain it, but it's bad.
Yeah, we'll play it. Spoiler alert, it's fucked up.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say too much, I guess, but it's a bad one for sure. This is just black on black violence.
How's the one lyrics?
Yeah, where they pulled the guy out of his vehicle and instead of being on the street, and his vehicle was over there on the left. I don't think that was the one I was looking for exactly. Let me...
On the street! On the street! On the street!
I can link it.
I just have to click the right video that he ends up sending me. There's just too many of them. Oh, this is a good one.
Bike, like, look.
We're gonna just... Let's just watch this one quick.
Okay.
I like this one. Because, like you're saying, people invest a lot of their life, their savings, their time, their energy.
Got the bike, like, look. Yo,
their
look
business
at this,
becomes
the owner,
a part of them.
Owner.
The owner's rolling
Yo,
up.
this the owner right here. Yo, he about to let it off. He about to let it off on him. Oh, yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
I just love it.
Yeah. What niggas talking about? Get the fuck about it.
He pulls a shotgun out of his fucking truck. Like, watch this. He rolls up.
Yo, this the owner right here. Yo, he
Guy
about to let it
recognizes
off.
that it's the owner, I guess.
He about to let it off on him.
Something.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, shit.
Crowds
Yeah.
just
Now we're fucking running.
Yeah. What niggas talking about? Get the
I think he
fuck
just popped a
about
shot
it.
into the air. I don't know if he even fired it at somebody.
Yeah, it depends on how much you restricted the trick in the gun or whatever.
I think he just popped it off into the
We
air.
got
just
the
took
bike.
A couple of shots.
Oh, shit.
And
That's fucking... Yeah, well, they're gonna run. I messaged you that video, by the way.
oh, you got it here.
The one with the sword and...
There we go.
White dude runs at a group of black dudes with a fucking sword. I don't know if it was a katana or what, or a saber, but this is in Dallas, I believe. Just needed.
Oh, hell no!
Okay, watch. Oh, here it comes.
Fuck is you doing, bitch ass boy? Look at that.
Oh my god!
Right there.
Holy fuck!
They just
Oh man!
Some bitches tell me y'all count money.
That one's hard to watch. It's even hard to pick out like swinging his sword. I'm just gonna mute it because that's fucked up. So
It might have been before the video started or whatever, but he was definitely chasing him. Like,
yeah,
well, who knows?
So he runs from way over there. He's going after this kid. The crowd's like, no fucking way. And then, yeah.
Oh shit.
Yeah, you guys saw the rest of that one. That one was.
Oh man, that wasn't a pebble. That was a rock. Can you show the Batman one, dude?
Oh, I have to pull that one up.
I can message it.
Well, it's in here. I just have to scroll up. There's too many messages that come in at once.
Yeah.
There's that one. All right.
There we go. Somebody needs to save the city.
My nigga, he here. He fucking
Just walking through the smoke.
My nigga, he here.
Save the city.
Through the fire and the flame. Just to save wherever the fuck he is. That would be sweet if it was bulletproof. It didn't have a bulletproof vest on. It was actually like plating and armor and whatnot.
Yeah, right.
Be badass.
That'd be something. Trending on Twitter right now is the KKK.
Which is funny because
Well,
most people think of the Klan as violent, but obviously they're hateful in message. But they kind of went the Westboro Baptist Church route where they wait for people to fuck with them and then they sue the shit out of them.
Well,
as I understand it.
It depends. Well, let's read what's going on before we make too many comments here.
Yeah, but that's like kind of the general backdrop of because they're so low in membership nowadays that
yeah,
they can't afford to be violent.
Racism's on the decline. I don't know why we're getting more outraged about it than we ever have been because it's pretty fucking low. Anyways,
Truth.
So KKK is spotted in the streets of Minneapolis, Chicago Avenue. People think it's Chicago because Chicago is the name of a street in Minneapolis.
Okay, are they referring to just white people who have like these 3%er shirts on or whatever, something else on, or like Patriot or like We the People shirts? Or are like, is that just, are they using that as a synonym for those kind of people? Or do they actually have fucking hoods? Because they don't have hoods and you can't identify them as KKK.
I don't know, but for some reason 430,000 people are tweeting about it. So I'm discovering this at the same time as you, so I'm just going to keep reading.
What's that one tweet? That Jetta at the bottom. The KKK just followed my dad home and tried to attack him because they thought he was breaking into our house.
The neighbors had to come and chase him off with bats. It took 7 of their white neighbors with weapons to come out and make them leave. So the KKK followed some random people home and threatened them. I don't know what makes them say KKK, but...
Is it just like white... Are they trying to categorize white hicks?
Just any white individual that approaches you is now KKK. Is what they're labeling it as. Is this how it's going to get spun around?
Possibly. I don't think it would get... I don't think it would get to that point where like news media says KKK, but probably on social media they'll just deem like white people chasing people who were or were not burglarizing and looting, and then just categorize them as KKK, like chasing, if the burglar happened to have been a minority, if they're just going to categorize them as that.
Right.
Because that's kind of fucked up.
I'm not seeing anything in here that throws me towards saying like, oh yeah, these guys got the hoods on. I don't know why it went all the way back up.
Yeah, see, and Crime Watch Minneapolis 5 minutes ago just tweeted out, like the screenshot of the map of Cedar Fields Park, all caps, shooting at Cedar Fields Park, white supremacist quotations involved, dispatch, right there. Like, how do you, like, white supremacists? Who said they're white supremacists? What if they're just white people who are assholes?
Right.
Shooting at whoever's, innocent or guilty.
Right. And it's like, when people say, how do you know it's Black Lives Matter? It's like, well, they were chanting Black Lives Matter for quite a while. So
yeah,
I'd imagine they're probably part of that group. But I don't know. I don't know how you identify white supremacists. I don't think they go around
and I think,
shouting white supremacy.
Yeah, exactly. And
over and over
again. I think that's how the right's going to spin it too against Black Lives Matter, because I think for the most part, Black Lives Matter is protesting peacefully. But I mean, if there are some black individuals who, obviously like would be in this situation would be looting or rioting, then how do you affiliate them with Black Lives Matter? Like, how do you know? If they weren't chanting anything, if they didn't have a Black Lives Matter shirt on or anything,
right?
They weren't recognized with a Black Lives Matter crowd, which was peacefully protesting at, many of the precincts and throughout the streets.
Some of these people are just peacefully protesting with
I feel like
baseball bats and tire irons.
Yeah, Jesus. It almost has a Columbine feel to it, where the media tries to label everybody and say they're responsible. And obviously, like, the different factions and news networks are just trying to perpetuate their narrative against this particular group and in favor of this particular group.
Yeah.
And it's all so fucking complex and convoluted. And to even comment on, like, who's responsible on the looting and rioting end, I think at this point is just absurd, because you have Antifa and the media says white supremacists, but we don't know. But if those assholes are out, then they obviously deserve their share of the blame. And maybe a few individuals in or out of Black Lives Matter who are on the fringe and want to commit violence.
Yeah.
Definitely, man.
Well, we're about to have a guest on here.
I just wish Freeman would have arrested all four of them and held them on pending charges. And it pisses me off that he didn't, because now, like, the people on the left especially are working hard to try to justify this looting and rioting when that could have been nipped in the bud right off the get-go.
Right. I wish. Here we go.
Gentlemen.
What's going on, sir?
Gentlemen, I have to say, this is an astounding victory for the government forces tonight in the great battle for Minneapolis.
The Redcoats win. The Redcoats win this night.
States win. Yeah, the States win in this one.
They got them this
Lexington time. And hey, in generations from now, they won't study Lexington and Concord in American history class. They will study Lake Street and 38th.
Oh, they kicked
of Minneapolis,
shit
Minnesota.
Out of them. And I was watching one of those little fucking protesters who were down there. He grabbed a fucking tear gas canister and burned a fucking hole through the little glove that he had by grabbing the thing.
Yeah, right.
Oh, they beat the shit out of him. And this is what happens when you keep. Again, I once again hold that I'm not somebody who adheres to the violence of the state. I dislike the state. I think the state needs to be severely diminished. In the context of a city burning down for 3 straight days, what did you think was going to happen?
Yeah, dude. Oh, Rochester, New York. Here, let's see what's happening here.
Oh, there was some business. I'm sure you guys have seen some memes of business owners who are just pulling up to their stores that are getting looted. This guy pulled up. I think it was in Rochester. I was filming and said, "Oh, here comes the owner." I came up with a shotgun and took a shot at the guys that were trying to loot his place.
We were just watching that.
I think I shared that too. Yeah, I did.
Yep.
Hey Ryan, can you play the video of the soccer mom Karen who turned around her SUV to run back or drive back into the crowd?
Where's that video?
Just type in Denver for Twitter, or Denver SUV or Denver vehicle. It's fucked up. And she's gonna get hit with charges, no doubt.
She just mows people down.
Yeah.
Or what?
Yeah, right there, top one.
Oh, wrong one. Yeah.
Hey, why haven't we heard anything about that black kid that was brutalized by a police officer in Mississippi?
Mississippi, I think it was, who choked him when he was on private property.
Yeah, exactly. Why haven't we heard anything about that? That's an interesting question I've had.
Boom, she's in the clear. She can go.
Watch out!
We can go. Here. Oh, boom.
Got her. Yep.
Did he start running after that? There he is. Oh yeah, he looks like he's limping. I was gonna say his whole leg kind of got wrapped up under there. That was fucked up.
Man, that's crazy. But I'm interested to see what happens in Portland and Seattle, because that's Antifa's HQ in Portland.
Dallas is fucking burning tonight. It looks like Dallas is a massive epicenter.
They're not even booging either. That's the part that pisses me off.
Yeah, you would have thought, but no, we should have known this. They weren't. This is their MO. They do not go after government centers unless the government centers are being unguarded by design. That's it. They tried to storm the Fifth tonight and they got pushed back. These fuckers got broken easier than a Kit Kat bar.
Yeah.
Not a good look for the revolution tonight, I must say.
No, not
the Boogaloo, the Big Igloo, the Big Loud.
They tried to co-opt that Boogaloo shit from the right. All of a sudden, okay, well, what can you do? You don't have the guns. Oh, well, we're a peaceful protest. Well, the last three nights
that's right, because
really show that.
They don't believe in gun ownership.
Right.
Their aim. Whoever was co-opting the protests that were made in righteousness, trying to co-opt this, their aim was never really a overthrow, it seems. It seems like their aim was just creating and causing disruptions, I suppose.
Yeah.
Try to push strain onto the system. And now they are strained. The system is going to be strained. It's going to be Detroit.
With no direction either for like justice when it comes to natural law, people having their rights infringed.
Right.
It's just
what's the plan?
Their goal isn't genuinely to like push back against the state. It's everything that's encompassed within fucking shit up, which includes in certain cities like Minneapolis on the first night, which was fucking up cop cars and obviously going after the third precinct then. But there was none of this other shit. But then the second day of riots and everything, just I feel so bad for fucking South Minneapolis.
It's done.
Yeah. I have friends down there.
It's a whole community that I was at least adjacent to while I was attending school down there. So I know a bit about it. It's not exactly the place where I would say it was my community, but I knew about the community. That's
not going to settle down there.
Yeah,
it's a sad state of affairs to see. I'm not going to, like other people, blame it. You know, I can take a look though and see what's happening and go, this is wrong. This shouldn't be happening. These are
definitely. And J-Rick, in terms of the looting and rioting, would you agree with the assessment that we can't tell who is responsible for a majority of it because it's so complex, convoluted, and tumultuous? And I mean,
there are already videos of black blocs giving money over to blacks to try to cause trouble, especially young black men to try to cause trouble, who are the most emotionally charged out of everybody, because young men are oftentimes the most emotionally chargeable. In that token, very easy to direct. Maybe not manipulate, but to steer in a manner that's just easy to direct.
And you throw in the the white Antifa rioters, who were allegedly burning fires around the construction sites under and around the 35W bridge or whatever. Their signature is kind of like just burning barrels and then just kicking them over. I mean, we see that time and time again.
Yeah, right. Anybody who's paying attention for the last 4 years, now we've got our confirmation on that live stream after they stole people's garage or garbage bins and they lit fires in them. That is a trademark. Right. That's a trademark tactic of theirs. Anybody who's trying to throw this at the feet of white supremacists just because they're dressed up like you'd expect poor brown shirts be dressed up. At the very least, the Nazis made their uniforms look halfway decent. These fuckers just come out in shabby black drag. This is not a man.
What made the white supremacists come out now? Like that? How many different events have happened involving black people where they've been protesting in the streets, especially like in Oregon, Portland, like. Never have they come out, but then they're coming out, and this is what happens the first time that they're coming out like this.
It's Charlottesville somehow, except it kind of is like Charlottesville, but in the opposite. Just funny because Charlottesville led to the midterms having a blue wave, so I wonder what the subsequent reaction to all of this is going to be for the House and the Senate. But in analyzing I'm not even
familiar with how violent that got or how chaotic it got down there. I do remember.
I think 2 people died.
Yeah.
It was that one poor woman who, after that fucker turned his car toward the crowd, she went flying, and then there was another person I think that died.
Just completely fucked her. So just looking across the country, I have to think that suburban moderate voters, suburban independents, even maybe some suburban moderate Democrats, might all be looking at this and saying, this is unacceptable. What are we doing here? And even though they don't like Trump, I do have an idea that they're at least not going to be so ideologically stepping into this election cycle.
Yeah, and Trump has to just play it right and not be a fucking moron by tweeting fucking time for a change, Trump 2020 and some other shit.
Yeah.
This is a debate here.
Chances.
This is a debate. I'm seeing this from right-wingers like Malkin and Cernovich. But other people have presented a differing opinion. If Trump was invited by the governor to take control, if the feds were allowed to take control under the auspices of the governors of these respective states, giving up power to him and the federal government to take command, does he do it?
Control.
Then it opens a floodgate because then they could just blame him.
Yeah,
they could just blame him. But the catch there is that the governors gave it to him. It's very different than Trump just assuming it, which is what rhetoric he peddled a couple days ago. Yep. Obviously,
that takes too many steps.
And there's constitutionality about it as well. You have to look into states' rights have now become relevant to these people.
Yep. Ryan, you were going to say something.
I'm just thinking more of just the perspective of it all, right? Because I think it's all about narrative when it comes to the media and all of this shit. And they're anti-Trump, right? And let's say the deep state, the people that want Trump removed, there's obviously things going on to try to just, and he ruins his image on his own, right? But the media just goes that extra mile to lie about shit for whatever fucking reason. I don't know. But I just feel like they would take whatever they can, even though, like you're saying, it would be them handing the powers over. That would never be in the media coverage. They would just say, responsibility fell to Trump. This is what happened after that. Because if the military came in and started popping people off, it's going to escalate into a whole bigger fucking shit show. All of a sudden, Trump's going to have blood on his hands, and that's what they would do. So I don't think he should stay away and just leave it up to the states. I mean, shouldn't each one of these governors or mayors be responsible at some fucking level? Like, it's always just the coronavirus is Trump's fault. Never mind that New York is just fucked under Cuomo.
Under Cuomo, and all those nursing homes that he sent all those sick elderly people back into to just decimate all of them. The most vulnerable population Trump. They kept telling us. Yeah, absolutely they did, because
they just go straight to the top. So
but once again, it's the perception and the over-centralization of the nation that has created this kind of climate where everything falls at the feet of the president. You could go back to Bush into crazy. Obama, even Clinton, Bush, Obama, Trump. Now everything is at the feet of the president instead of states having some means of autonomy, actual autonomy, and power to be able to fight against the Fed, powerful as that has become, in order to kind of determine their own interests.
Well, it's just been year after year, president after president, I think, that we've just given the executive branch more and more power. And
what's to be the most powerful
more power
branch
comes
in government,
more responsibility, and it opens the door to just being blamed for everything.
The legislature doesn't do anything because the legislature, whenever it's owned by the same party that the sitting president is also representing, will give that power to him so that may benefit them in utilizing the state against their political opposition. And I don't understand how nobody picks up on the cycle yet. Everything that we're talking about has always revolved around the picking apart of the apparatus that has been built. That is what we refer to as the state. Now, it's in differing levels that we speak to. Some people are full anarchists. I am a minimalist in principle because I don't think that a nation state can exist out of government, and nation states have proven themselves to be a very useful invention. I digress. From police brutality at the local level to abuse of power by elected officials all the way up to the state level to bureaucrats basically writing laws at the cloak of night, an 880-page relief omnibus that nobody was able to read in time, or at least not accurately, what we still don't know everything that's in it, nor the implications of how this is going to play out, especially now after these riots. You take a look at all of this, and in your head, you just have to go, why? Why is it like this? Not why don't we have power to be able to try to coercively make everything like we want it to. Why is the coercive power as so invasive as it is?
I don't know.
Just control.
Well,
the state.
It's just been piece by piece as they've just stacked things on through fear-mongering and taking advantage of any sort of event that comes up. I don't know how else to explain it other than that. I mean, the Patriot Act and the FISA court coming through that's allowed them to do so much.
Both of those things fully supported by Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden, and also Trump in a sense.
Yeah,
because he reauthorized.
Well, because he reauthorized those things, and then when you get
again, disappointment. Another disappointment from him.
Yeah. Yeah, I just think with all the things that have been passed, it's just all stacked up to the government has way too much fucking power. It needs to be dialed back.
It's really what it boils down to. And now we got something out of Oakland. Federal Protective Service officer who died Friday night after suffering from a gunshot wound in Oakland amid protests been identified as 53-year-old Patrick Underwood of Pinola, according to a family member. So, fighters against the death of a black man killed a black officer, but the blackness will not matter because he's wearing the costume. So you kill the black. So that's the question here is, skin obviously matters in this. Otherwise, we should have all been in uproars a long time ago when American citizens were being ripped apart by police officers.
That's a good point, Jay Rick. Like I was saying, it doesn't matter if the state abuses and or kills or harasses a black or white individual. It's an individual they're abusing, killing, or harassing.
Right.
That's the whole point. Is libertarians know that well. It's the state versus us. It's not black versus white.
I'm not even so sure.
What they try to.
Going back into that thought, I'm not so sure that it's always right now. It is the state versus us. By the design of the public, as it was supposed to be, state, paying it lip service, I don't like to do, but it is supposed to serve us because you're supposed to have virtuous people operating within its mechanisms. The checks and balances are in place in case those who present themselves to be virtuous and righteous do not turn out to be so. The problem with state in its current incarnation is that there's so many people who you can obviously point at and say, you're not righteous and you're not just, because you wouldn't have to be career politicians who operate with unlimited authority, or not unlimited authority, but unlimited time, I suppose, save for if you are thrown out of office by your electorate, which is a whole nother problem because there are some certain areas within the country who will never throw out their elected official. Never.
Yeah, there's some that have been there for forever. Feinstein, politicians
like
that.
Yeah.
It harkens Feinstein, McConnell, Pelosi, Nadler, Schumer. I'm sure the Republicans. What was it? Who was that guy that was getting caught for insider trading? We haven't heard about that for a while. Haven't heard about that
I
one.
don't know.
A bit busy.
I don't know which ones were involved. I can't remember the names.
A couple of them were long tenured senators, if I remember correctly. Not the one from Georgia, but still, the couple of them were long tenured, and they were heads of intelligence committee, if I remember correctly, one of them. So you have these same people in office for decades, and there are arguments for or against that, but just continuously serves into the problem. I feel like if the state wasn't so expansive, it wouldn't be so much of a problem that these people can essentially be equated to as life terms, so long as they don't mess it up. Because the state is so powerful and expansive, now we have to call into question if term limits are something that we should implement against the legislature.
Well, there's that, and I think there's a lack of education around how this whole system works. As far as jury nullification, how many juries know that? Imagine that they're stuck between decision A and decision B, and they don't like any of it. Well, do they know that they don't have to go down either of those roads? Can they say that this is bullshit? How many people know that?
Right, that's a problem. It seems because the connotation, the false narrative of a Southern rebellion being about states' rights, Wilson had promulgated back in his heyday. It would be President Woodrow Wilson, one of the chief individuals of the early progressive movement in this country, who also wrote about the false lost Southern cause. I always advise people to look into him and see how really awful of a man and awful of a politician he is. But it's because
was a terrible fucking person.
It's because he promulgated that kind of narrative. The North will always look at states' rights in some sort of association with, oh, you just want to bring slavery back. Oh, you Southern hick, you just want to bring slavery back. And that's that's a perception that, at least here, is very difficult to overcome.
Huh. That sounds like Kathy Newman or something.
That allows for continued centralization, right? The states' rights bit, when it's mocked up here, people lean toward collectivization and centralization into what they see as the ultimate authority, which is the federal government.
Yep.
And it's resulted in this now paradoxical kind of viewpoint where you would have been freer under the absolute monarchies of old Europe, the German Empire, the Russian Empire, the Austro-Hungarian Empire. You would have been, just from a comparison standpoint, freer than you would be under a democratic republic like the United States, which has a massive surveillance system invested into them by the government. Politicians all voted for it, and all of the people voted for the same politicians who voted for that over and over and over again. It's a culpability and an accountability that people just do not want to identify within themselves, because it's so much easier to say the other side is terrible without any self-reflection.
Well, yeah, and how many people alive today are responsible for what percentage of the laws on the books? I mean, how many laws are on the books, and how many people have been around for them?
Just the tax code alone, I mean, on the federal level.
Right.
It's insane.
And I know that it's just flip-flopping sides, and people do play into that whole thing like, oh, you're on that side. Well, you're terrible because of what they've done throughout history. And the Democrats are terrible because they were actually the more racist of the parties in the past.
It's always it's some kind of excuse. There's always some kind of excuse.
You can always say something.
Dems were the ones that started this whole thing. Yeah, but you're supporting a police authority which is empowering individual racists to act out their whims on a populace without any sort of repercussion. Because the unions, you need to pull that one up and show Driver, Ryan. That's really good. Because the unions will protect them. Getting back to our regularly scheduled program about the riots, though. Oh, this one's just amazing.
The one that you just sent?
Yep. It's so good. It's just so good.
Oh man, he literally roasts himself.
Right.
Spoiler.
Some good shit.
And now it's funny because the left now thinks that the media isn't going to share the peaceful aspects of this. Are we all in just different worlds, just different alternate parallel universes that somehow have intersected? Media is now not on the left side.
Hashtag rise.
Oh my god, they just tried giving you a cover for white supremacists, which has been thoroughly debunked by anybody who isn't a partisan hack. And it's just
so he picked something up. Oh, he threw it over himself and just
Molotov cocktail himself. That's worse. That's worse than the 4 people in New York who it was 3 or 4 people who tried throwing a Molotov cocktail in the car and it got through, but it didn't firebomb for some reason, and so they're getting charged with, I think, attempted murder. So they're in custody right now.
See, this is all just going to, and Minneapolis at the very least, it didn't seem like it got too violent. Whoever is in charge now, whoever was put in leadership, really came up. Oh god, it's great, isn't it? Really came up with a great plan tonight to be able to break the protests fairly quickly. Now there's still reports people are hanging about, right? And in Dallas. In Dallas, it seems to be Dallas's night because, well, the armed militia are marching into Dallas, Texas right now.
Wait, who's marching into what?
So police have lost control of Dallas. There is a report that an armed militia are coming to help protect the businesses that reside within Dallas from the...
Oh shit!
What do you even call them these days?
This is from Minnesota Cop Block. On Facebook. There, it's a Vice article. The headline is Minneapolis bus drivers refuse to transport George Floyd protesters to jail. But how do you know if they're protesters or rioters?
And how do you know if? And that's always the funny thing. You know, I don't trust Vice very much. There's for obvious reasons, but.
Vice used to be the best.
Used to be. But my question is, why aren't they transporting them? Might it have something to do with the violence that the firefighters had to deal with the past couple of nights?
Yeah.
Everybody is acting so righteous right now.
Jamar Clark, where God, I can't remember. I think he was threatening EMTs or something like that. And some other people, I think when they got called out to the house where he and his girlfriend got in an argument or some shit, and that was before he got shot. But yeah, fighting EMTs, excuse me, and paramedics and firefighters, that's a good way to just completely and utterly shit all over your credibility and just your moral landscape as a human.
It's a good way for people not to give a shit if you get shot.
Exactly.
It's a good way to really have people say, okay, put him down. And I've noticed this. It's been bothering me a bit. I've been reading through a couple of comments. This is off the topic of Clark and police brutality, but the suburbanite Marxists or the suburbanite progressives, whatever you want to refer to them as, I've been reading through all of their posts. Do you know what language I continue to see? What 2 particular words? I keep seeing my and our, especially when it's put in front of our black citizens, our black community, our POCs. And
so collective.
It's not only collective, it's weird. It's very
possessive.
Weird. The possessive thing is what throws me off a bit.
Yeah. As if something belongs to you, or you're showing partnership. Yeah.
It just has some weird vibes, man.
Definitely.
It's the same as our children, our communities. You preach about our communities. You live somewhere far away from Minneapolis from a general kind of measurement. I'm not going to say Minneapolis is my community. I can refer to it as the community of Minneapolis. They are my fellow citizens, but that's just from a technical standpoint of both residing in Minnesota and the United States of America. When when I see that language being spoken, something just strikes me as really strange.
It is odd. Yeah.
The person...
It's loaded language for sure.
Yeah. The person who uses that a lot is AOC when she talks about,
right?
Our community, like my district, like like the impoverished and fighting for the working class when she had a very privileged, she was always saying, I was just a bartender in, was it Brooklyn or Queens? But growing up, she was very privileged.
Yeah, right.
Especially when... Go ahead, Ryan.
It can just be persuasive, I think, too. When you're speaking like that, it could be a way to draw people in. And I don't know if it's just the way speechwriters are in politics or something like that.
Right. And the thing with AOC saying that is that it by definition is her community that she's referring to. But when she begins to rope other communities of which she's not directly involved in, I'm not talking about politicians per se. I'm talking about just these general people who don't have any political sway.
Sure.
Who don't have... There's nothing that they're trying to sell, right? They're just trying to spread some kind of message when they're posting a platitude, and they say
everywhere.
Our POCs, especially when it's white people, that really shakes me just the wrong way. I it's a cock eye a little bit. Like, you mean I look down there. I don't blame any kind of relationship to those people, save for the natural relationship the natural comparison that I have with them as a citizen, because that's just the overarching blanket that we're both in. And consider it tribalism if you want to, but it's exactly just kind of feels natural to me. What feels unnatural is claiming things that don't necessarily you don't belong to, or better yet, don't belong to you.
I mean, I think it's
a sinister,
it's a deeply rooted thing within us. I mean, when you're talking about tribalism, and I see exactly what you're getting at too.
Right, and state lines are so arbitrary, but at the same time, they're not in some cases. So it's a paradox in a sense.
I think that we are tribal in a sense. So you're just saying being tribal, like we're Minnesotans and we hate Wisconsins, right? Like Wisconsin.
Exactly. Something so petty like that is you're Minnesotan within the United States of America. That's essentially it. It's Minnesotan, U.S., but the territorial rivalry is I dislike Iowa, or I dislike Wisconsin, or I dislike the Dakotas.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you feel some sort of connection to something, and I think that this is just something that's been around forever. People somehow, I think it's I guess I don't know how it really happened, where it switched to this, because I don't think it was ever about specifically black people in slavery. I know that a majority maybe were black people, but there were black owners that had black slaves, so it wasn't like the race was the defining factor.
Race
wasn't more with class.
Yeah, until a few years just before the Civil War, race had never been a motivating factor when it came to slavery throughout human history. Right. And in fact, after Britain abolished slavery, I just got done reading one of Thomas Sowell's books. They would spend up to 4 million. I'm not sure if it was adjusted for inflation or not, but 4 million sterlings per year. Just going up and down.
Yeah, whatever that is in U.S. dollars.
Yeah, going up and down the West African coast to take over these slave-owning ships, because they had abolished it, and many of the elites and the majority of the populace in Britain did not support slavery. They rightfully thought it was barbaric, but they would spend that money with nothing in return, really, even with seized ships, to stop slave trading, essentially.
right?
With very little success, of course, but still, the Western civilization made such an effort to abolish slavery and completely get rid of it, but that perspective is never brought up in history class or anything. Like the West made in and out of court, the court systems, the various ones, they made the best effort to abolish it, while slavery is still thought of as moral in many countries. And in the 1800s, they didn't even think it was a moral issue when it came to the Ottoman Empire and other various African slave trades, whereas Western civilized countries did, and they fought to end it.
Right, and that's what makes it so confusing for me, is who were the ones that were fighting to end the whole thing. I mean, it was ultimately Americans. So how is it that this country is the worst country? And I've been hearing this. Walz said it. Our mayor said it. Frey, whatever, of Minneapolis.
At least implied it, right?
Well, no, he literally said 400 years of slavery.
Yeah, you want to pull up the Frey's tweet or whatever it was? I'll try to find it.
And do we want to talk about the other 10,000 years of human history that is recorded?
Oh, right.
Right. It's funny.
Just for them to be saying that, it's like it's just bullshit.
All that about Britain.
Okay, here's what Frey said.
And all that about Britain going about and ending slavery. That sounds like cultural imperialism, there, boys. That sounds very, very non-woke.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Exactly.
We can't have that. Put them back in their chains and put them back into those tribes that we took from.
And this, this was Mayor Jacob Frey. J-Rick, he literally said this here. I'll read it to you. What we've seen he tweeted this. What we've seen over the last 2 days in the emotion-ridden conflict over last night is the result of so much built-up anger and sadness. Anger and sadness that has become ingrained in our Black community, not because of just 5 minutes of horror, but 400 years.
This is clearly American exceptionalism at work. And I know Frey will disown American exceptionalism, but clearly he is an exceptionalist because he must expect us to not look at any other country at any other time period throughout history. America solely on its own truly is a thing that the world revolves around. That sounds like American exceptionalism to me. That sounds very exceptional.
When will the descendants of white European Mediterranean slaves that were brought in by the Ottoman Empire, when will they get slavery reparations?
Ever. Barbary pirates.
Right.
We're not going to talk about them.
And that's been a good question for the reparations argument, is where do you draw the line as far as who is entitled to what from whom throughout. It's just like when you say 400 years of the U.S., so basically we were fucked 100 years before we were even established. Like, it didn't matter what we did because we're just going to point at this. We can be like, this happened. Fuck you. It's like, I've only been alive for 30 fucking years.
Exactly.
like, what am I supposed to do?
I had nothing to do with it.
That from the abortionist camp, there seems to be a very interesting kind of viewpoint about how you're fucked when you get conceived well before you're actually born. But I digress about that. It's just a fascinating kind of viewpoint that the modern left in this country is so very globalist and tolerant and understanding and wanting to just get along with everybody. But the moment you want to invoke a piece of history that's outside of the United States that could ruin an argument for them, they will solely focus in only on this history, and they will exclude any other people's as a means of conversation just so that they can win, just so that they can get what they want. So,
and I think in the United States,
they're the very stark reflection of what they have pointed the finger at. They're the right in terms, at the very least, of the dishonest tricks that they will utilize.
Right. I always think that it's just whatever they seem to be accusing others of, they're doing all along the way.
It's so very strange. And Frey, I've lost names. The guy who Fry looks like he's gonna cry. That's why I saw on those pressers.
Constantly. God.
Walz
so much emotion.
Walz threw him to the wolves yesterday. Yeah. And
poor
then
bastard.
Walz gets picked up. And Walz is merciful today, gets picked up on a mic, says, "I'm sorry you had to answer a question." From a reporter asking a question of, "Do you feel like you failed the city of Minneapolis?"
Walz threw him under the bus. Well, Walz needs to stay afloat with his approval numbers. He was at what, 65% last week?
Well,
that's not going to happen now.
Fail, dude. He did.
Walz messed this up last night. He had his chance to be able to get it together. He messed up last night because he once again underestimated the beast that was unleashed. And now maybe it'll be a slight bounce back from the rest of the surrounding areas. Minneapolis will always vote blue. And those who might vote red would never dare to say it because they know they're ingratiated with these people, but it's the one difference.
The way that
one
Minnesota
differing,
is,
not with Minnesota, but just with ideological absolutism. Where if you're not in lockstep, goose stepping to a polling booth to vote Dem, you are not going to be allowed to engage in any social circles. You will not be asked how you're doing. In your workplace. You will be ostracized. These are documented things that the left
that's a scary society in which you live.
We're already in it. They eat their own, dude. If you aren't completely, if you didn't use the right LGBTQA plus 3A2.375, if you didn't say the right fucking shit, it's gotten crazy. I saw some article where it went on forever and then it ended with numbers and a plus. I'm just
not
what
only,
the fuck?
Two-Spirit.
Two-Spirit. That's another one.
Exclamation point will mean something. I'm sure that'll be.
It's just.
If you go and do any of that, not only will you be denied social recognition, which is important for humans, not only will you be denied, possibly even be denied. Where am I going with this? So there's social circles. There's a second one that I'm missing here, but the third one is the biggest one. The third one is you will not be allowed to hold a gainful employment that can allow for you to exceed in life. You do not have a right to work if you hold a particular position that you voice publicly.
Yeah, and exactly. You're gonna have to. You're gonna have to just. I guess I don't know what the right word is. It's not really comply, but ascribe to
comply
things that you may not.
Comply is perfect. Comply is a perfect word because you must. Must stay silent. You must comply with the social norms that are pressed upon you.
You can't be yourself all of a sudden. You're not going to be as expressive.
Yeah.
You're going to be stuck within a system that you're not going to feel right in because you're not going to be able to be yourself because, at least today you can express yourself. And I don't think people realize that, as much as I may think that you're a freak, that's fine. There's nothing I can really do about it. And I've hired some freaks before. It's not like I wasn't going to hire them. It doesn't matter what they look like or whatever. It's if you're going to get the job done, that's fine with me. But
doesn't matter what your views are, yeah.
It's going to turn into, do you have these viewpoints? Then you get the job. We already see that. Do you have this skin color? You're an elected official now. It doesn't matter what your credentials are.
It's a very patronizing kind of thing.
It's a bass-ackward system right there.
Yeah.
You're putting people in positions of power based on credentials that make absolutely no sense. you're picking the best NBA star based on like a cooking competition that they had, like just completely unrelated. I think you're the next LeBron James. Those cookies were fantastic.
Yep.
It just makes no fucking sense.
Yeah, and
I don't get it.
It goes beyond social media. Like, and the next step is obviously employment and like finance, like banking, being able to have a Patreon site and not getting blacklisted and whatnot. But you look at what Zuby did on Twitter. He was, I think he was talking to an individual who identified as transgender or something like that, and all he said was in his replies was like, "Okay, dude." And then he got suspended or banned.
Yeah.
He got his account locked. That's all he said was just, "Okay, dude." Like he didn't say the right.
He didn't say what they wanted you to say. That is
a
dangerous precedent to set. And Peterson made this fairly clear in front of the Human Rights Tribunal in Canada, which is okay. All right, a Human Rights Tribunal. Whenever I hear the word tribunal, I always get a little bit queasy, just a tad. But
like military tribunal, virtually no rights. Yeah,
you get nothing. But when Peterson was making this case, he said that you are compelling individuals to have to say certain thing, not just censoring them, which is which is a demon all its own, to compel an individual to have to speak something that ideologically they disagree with or know isn't true.
Right.
It's just insane. It's insane.
Well, yeah. Imagine like being sucked into a cult and you have to chant with them, and if you don't chant with them, you could possibly end up dead or locked up.
It's like Soviet
that's
Russia.
Pretty damn close.
Soviet Russia, whenever the premier or whoever was in charge would, at a party gathering, what would be the equivalent of their parliament or their Congress, they would stand up. They would stand up and clap, and they would stay standing clapping. And the KGB would look around, and they would see who would be the first one to sit.
Yeah, nobody wanted to be the first one to sit down.
I mean, there were reports that they would stand up clapping for like 8, 10, 15 minutes.
Wow. Just because you didn't want to be that one guy that wasn't towing the line. Yeah, it's fucked up where we've been slowly drifting in this direction, and it's ramping up real fucking quick. I mean,
you're freer under Austria-Hungary than you are under the United States of America. That is just the truth. It's just the truth. Yeah. It's a black pill. It's a black
just
pill.
Get back to free speech.
It's the dismantlement of all of the layers upon layers that we have passed.
Right.
A lot of them some of them probably unconstitutional.
Oh yeah, if they were really to go back and look at it.
Keep what we have as far as constitutional amendments, the Bill of Rights, because you have to have those unless the states don't pass them. But
well, they make sense.
But some of them do. I don't agree with a particular one about the senators have to be voted in by direct vote. I think, hear me out here, people are really stupid and keep voting for the same shit. So, once it got passed, California is always going to have. When's the last time you saw a split? A split in Minnesota. We've always had 2 Democrat senators, as far as I can remember. Texas. When's the last time you've seen them have 2? Well, it was 2 Republican senators. Texas, 2 Democrat senators. You don't see it. You don't even see a 1-1. You almost saw it with Beto, but you didn't. Meanwhile, you have states like Dakotas, who will always have Republicans, and the coastal small original 13, who will always have Democrats. I thought, and I think, if you repealed the amendment where senators were elected by direct vote, you would have a greater focus on your local politics in regards to who your elected officials within.
So what's the vote that you're recommending instead then?
My recommendation
what's the difference here?
My recommendation is the previous system, which is a direct vote for the state representatives and senators, and then whatever mechanism there has to be that the state decides, they utilize as the means.
What does direct vote mean then? Like,
you know how you basically have a couple of candidates within the particular district you reside in within state or whatever township there might be. Roch is up for election right now for the Monticello, Maple Lake, and who knows what other area. There's a third one. So those people, for the passing of, I think it was the 22nd. I need to look at this just to be sure, but hold on to make sure. God damn it.
Well, when I just hear direct vote, I just don't know what it means versus voting for somebody. Is that like regular voting? You're voting directly for somebody?
So there are different types of voting, right? The college where the current system we have, the states get to decide who they have their delegates to be. Typically, they elect a winner-takes-all sort of methodology, but some states allow for the divvying up of delegates.
Right, so you're talking about delegates versus like one-to-one voting.
Exactly.
Would that be one way of putting it?
Yeah, so the legislatures within the state now serve as the delegates that represent the particular townships they were elected to represent, cast the vote. It's an indirect election via state representatives of who will be your senatorial representative in the federal Senate.
Right, and I think people think that it should be that way. So then in the Hillary versus Trump election, would you say in that sense would Hillary have won since she had more votes?
Oh, because this doesn't change the college. That is the federal electoral system. That's the federal executive electoral system. That's the electorate system for the president. The system that I want to see return is that voters vote their elected representative within the state legislative body.
So for their senators or their congresspeople?
At the state level, yes.
Okay.
State level. State level representatives then will cast their vote for who they think is most, who they like the most, I suppose is a better way of wording it, to then be next senator. Because so far, what we have is we have a lot of Republican counties in Minnesota. But they don't have a population that could ever really outvote Democrats, because the Democrats have the biggest population mass within what's it called, Minneapolis, St. Paul, and the neighboring suburban areas. Because of that massive population, and because that there's a direct vote by the citizens toward who the senator is going to be, that allows for basically a monopoly on Senate seats.
Sure.
Follow, right?
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying.
Definitely. Well, and Dems have the stranglehold, so it's going to be
numbers.
That,
well,
that
that's why they want to have more people funneled in. I see what you're saying.
Do you want to add something, Jarek?
Let's say I'm just trying to find the 17th Amendment. Here we go. The election of senators. This is again something that shouldn't have been passed, because it should be up to the states as to who they want to elect. They can still implement a direct electoral system, but the 17th requires senators to be elected by a direct vote of those he or she will represent. Election winners are decided by a plurality rule. That is, the person who receives the highest number of votes wins. I think that's bullshit because the urban will always outvote the rural. But if we have an electoral college system in place for the presidency, why exactly do we not offer the states the option to have a similar electoral college system at the state level?
Yep. Yeah, I guess I could see that because I do agree with that argument of just strong, like higher numbers shouldn't outweigh, the size of the entire state, because you concentrate everybody here and then it's controlling everybody out here, whereas Minneapolis is far different than Grand Marais or Ely or anywhere up there, Detroit Lakes, just not even they're not comparable.
And you factor in, I think, legalized bribery, which is obviously the welfare aspect of it, where if somebody's on welfare and they're not doing anything and they're just getting all this money that other people have to work for and get taken from them and given to them, well, they're not going to vote for somebody who wants to cut their welfare. They're going to vote for somebody who wants to increase their welfare.
Right. So on it.
And when you factor in that, it makes it such an unfair and unjust system. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Well, imagine if we voted for people that passed stuff that actually helped us. Like, how much stuff helps Minneapolis and the cities, and how much money gets dumped into there? And I know that's where most of the people are, and a lot of shit happens down there, but how much gets siphoned out of these other areas just to support those fucking assholes, especially after all of this?
Yeah.
My fun question is, what does Minneapolis give back? Say for being
fucking
the host
jack
of,
shit.
Say for being the host of all of the major
John, we got a light rail, all right? You take that back.
Yeah,
we got a light rail.
I'm sure you do.
If you want to go and use any of these services, like if you want to go to US Bank Stadium that the taxpayers are footing the bill for, you're going to pay a fucking $100+ a seat per time you want to go there. Yeah. It's just crazy. It's the craziest sort of fucking shit.
And smokers who paid for the fucking stadium don't get to smoke inside.
Exactly. At some point, you have to realize that all the big city really is, save for all the jobs that it can offer, because it does offer a lot of jobs that cross a lot of different industries, but does a lot of that production, does a lot of what is being made in those places ever go back out to reach the rural communities? I mean, obviously there's a demand for the rural to ship food into the city. What does the rural get back? Sure. I guess technological innovation to help make their lives easier. At some point, the trade-off has to be evaluated.
Well, yeah,
exactly.
I think Duluth, the only thing we can say up here is tourism. People come to visit us, but who goes to visit the rest of the state? Hardly anybody. You need to have something worth going to, I guess.
I suppose that's an intrastate question in regards to just how we evaluate the demographics of our own state. It's just what's going on here. Grand Rapids has been going up in flames. That doesn't look good. Shit.
Bunch of cars firebombed. I linked you guys to it.
Yeah, it's not stopping. I mean, 30 million people are unemployed, and everybody has been cooped up for days or months now. They've implemented the authoritarian state just by asking nicely. And now it's been completely forgotten. It's been completely forgotten just for whatever the hot news story is.
That's an average night in Sweden.
Malmo, yeah.
Good old Malmo.
At what point, and this is always going to be the great libertarian schism, the idea of the utilization of force against those who are citizens of the nation. At what point is a line going to be drawn or a leader who might have libertarian principles to say, I have to accept the force is a necessity to put down what is going to endanger individuals should this mob not be checked.
Definitely. And I think if that should definitely be the last resort as state force, but if it could somehow be citizen led, and I think a lot of the bullshit that we're seeing in South Minneapolis could definitely get cut down, like Ryan and I and we had all discussed earlier, when I brought up the point that if business owners were encouraged to arm themselves, and if they were in their stores, stay there and just shoot the fucking looters,
right,
the vast majority of them who are not armed with, or as armed as the business owners would be or should be, I think that would take away a lot of the shit and a lot of the looting we see. And just responsible citizens armed, defending themselves. Yeah. But like you said, that's definitely a question that isn't easily answered. Is if you did have a libertarian-minded president who was in this situation, what would you do? Because you didn't nip it in the bud by deploying the National Guard, obviously, and not that a leader would have done that who's libertarian, because
it didn't nip it in the bud the first 3 nights.
Yeah, and now they're
last night especially was the point. I did say this from the onset, is that if they continue to riot and continue to do the same sort of stuff that they've been doing, which is going to create a long-lasting economic impact that is going to be felt by a lot of people. It's funny how people say brick and mortar don't matter when juxtaposed to human life. I would like to point them to the lives of every single person born inside the city of Detroit post-1967 who've lived there their whole lives, and maybe you can see the abject misery and poverty that they have had to endure. And maybe you'll have a different opinion. Maybe you'll have a different opinion when you realize that a lot of those goods that you had at least some easy access to now not nearly as easily accessible. And do you think that any of that's just going to come back lickety split?
Exactly. I mean, if you're a pizza delivery guy in Chicago, are you really just gonna go to West Side without charging an exorbitant amount, knowing that there's a chance that you may indeed fucking get shot because of all the violence?
Would you even serve it? Would you even, as a business owner, serve that area?
The only I have a little bit of inside experience with this. Not that I've personally gone through it. I haven't gone through it with work, but I've talked to people. Doing the pizza business. There were certain areas that you don't deliver to, and that happens because some areas are just fucked. But there was a guy that told me he went and he talked to like a gang leader for his store and worked it out. And he's like, I'll give you guys a good deal. And so his community, basically, like that area, he gave them a special deal just so that he could do business with them. And then that whole area knew that these guys were legit. These pizza guys, they're all right. If anybody fucks with them, they're in big fucking trouble. So it was almost like they were backed by the gang to work in that area. So it can go either way, really. I mean,
it's such a strange relationship, isn't it?
It can be. I mean, it depends. If you go at it the right way, I think you can build those relationships and make a difference. And then all of a sudden you're making money in a community where, you're making $0, but you're selling it for cheap. They're getting something, at a great price. Everybody's winning in that scenario.
Yeah, exactly. And that's always what you have to play with as you consider what you're going to do.
Right. Yeah. So I don't want to say like it's an easy thing that you can just do, but in certain certain people can get those deals done. So it's just
because again, that's the great secret of the world that people don't really seem to grasp is that there's not a right answer. There's not a right answer. There is choices that you can make. There are benefits and drawbacks, but there's more than one way to skin the cat, right? There's more than one way to skin the cat. There are drawbacks and there are benefits in each particular way. And it's the same thing here. There's just...
Well, and a lot of it comes down to leadership, because things are formed in hierarchies, and I mean, that's what we have today. We elect leaders that are supposed to be making these tough decisions and doing, making mistakes and owning up to them. Walz claims to own all of this and all of this bullshit, but it's like, at this point, that means nothing, because the entire city's fucked. So it's like, you better own it, because it's obviously your fault. And I just think that...
Let me rephrase what I was saying, because I just realized the flaw in my logic there. There is never one solution that satisfies everybody.
Oh, no.
There we go.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's a better train of logic than there's no right answer, because there's definitely right answers in terms of...
There can be, but you don't know. And sometimes it just takes a certain individual, and I don't know if we have that in some of our elected leaders with this shit, because sometimes you gotta go outside the box and do stuff that maybe seems unconventional, borderline outside your power, especially when it comes to this. I mean, the city's in chaos. Do you use a little more force than you'd like to? Because how many people are getting fucked up by their establishments being burned down, and then you just say, oh, they're just brick and mortar, they mean more than lives. And it's like, but people's livelihoods are invested in these places.
And Walz is going to have a fucking lot to answer when people start asking questions about, where he placed or where he kind of directed or advised certain law enforcement agencies or precincts or sects to go based upon the information he was getting and the reports he was getting to make informed decisions about where, like, if businesses aren't going to be protected or whatever, like, well, which ones do we protect, when, how long do we want to have officers there and whatnot, and is that going to escalate and bring more violence if cops are there and they're seen as targets for people who want to boog, obviously, and then the business owners get caught in the way.
This is just...
Well, the business owners weren't there. Like, what do you mean caught in the way?
Well, their businesses. I mean, their livelihoods.
Well, obviously. Yeah, I mean, they're caught in it regardless. So what do? Do you let people destroy those businesses, or do you step in?
But that's the question: is which businesses? Do they really have enough? Does Walz have enough resources to send cops to every business? Or...
How are we completely controlling the situation now versus the past 4 fucking days? What's the difference all of a sudden? You're using force, and like I said, we have the technology and we have all of these tactics to use. Like, do we really need to?
Oh, the slippery slope. We have the technology. Well, no. I understand. I know.
Do we need to be 1-to-1, or can 10 people be dispersed by one individual?
That's a good point.
Right.
That's why I'm just saying, like, why is it all of a sudden, do we have enough manpower, even though it's like these protests have been ramping up? I just
tonight did happen is very
and
strange.
That is a good point. Is the ratio
popped off?
Yeah,
I mean, that's the difference. They stood down for days and they started popping off. Like, these people aren't going to keep going if there isn't any retaliation. They got to burn buildings endlessly for days. That's why it's like...
So my hypothesis was really right in that these people were being emboldened by no action, essentially. Or just
they gave them a free pass.
Right.
You even heard it in the media. You don't see police anywhere. There's not a cop in sight. There's chaos in the streets, not an officer in sight. You have Walz's fucking daughter going up on Twitter saying, the National Guard isn't going to be here today. Oh, you dipshits that are thinking the National Guard's going to be here. They're actually not. I'm the fucking daughter of the governor, and I'm telling you, the National Guard's not going to be here. Don't worry. It's going to be tomorrow.
The fact that she said that,
fucking nuts.
That is crazy because if that was reliable information, obviously, and we don't have any reason to believe it wasn't because it's the fucking governor's daughter and she heard it. But she openly states the strategy, which then I think is like
right.
The looters and rioters can feed off of, and they can time it even better because they know when the fuck to leave because they know when shit's gonna hit the fan, like you were saying.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I mean, we could say, oh, if they instigate or if they try to do anything, they're just going to make it worse. They're going to be instigating the whole thing. But it's so hard to believe that if you're, like I'm saying, you're a dude in gym shorts and you're being met with tear gas and all sorts of fucking equipment, the technology, as I said, how long are you going to keep going? Are you going to just keep going endlessly as you're just getting fucking gassed and rubber bullets shot at you? I mean, I don't know how it really would have made it that much worse because it was already fucked up as it was.
So
that's a good point.
I wonder what would have happened. I'm glad the protesters broke under these tactics because I wonder if these guys, because it didn't look like it was the National Guard that was really that involved. It looked like it was just your regular militarized police, which we rail against. But finally, under some kind of, the dog off of his leash, they broke them fairly quickly. So two questions are, if they had implemented this a couple of nights ago, or especially the night previous when they had finally arrested Chauvin.
Right.
The riot has gotten that bad where things were torched everything is being torched unnecessarily, save for the government buildings, because just by nature of the whole interaction, that's where this movement's aggression should be angled towards. The legitimacy of the grievance is still righteous. It is just the nature of how it is being executed that is muddying the water. So that's the first question. The second question is, why didn't the supposed rioters who were of higher number tonight than any of the other nights, they broke in so easily? I thought
that's what I don't get.
These were hardened individuals who were ready from whatever it was that maybe I have to look back. Maybe people did get off the streets by 8. I saw a fun little video of the police marching down the street, and people, or a woman, I should say, who pronouns in the bio, so let's keep that in mind, was outside recording them. Now, this is hostile territory for them because they don't know who's going to be peeking anywhere. So understanding that, shot a pepper ball at her. It's not. There becomes another argument: is that thuggishness by the police, or is that a necessary tactic because they are marching into a situation which has been hostile for 3 days, which has resulted in not non-stop, but fairly prevalent rioting and looting.
Where the fuck have they been?
Why? Where the fuck?
I think I know what you're talking about. Where they're in their own yard on that one, aren't they?
They're just on their deck. They're just on their deck.
Right. They're on their own property. So, and I was bitching about this earlier before you called in. Is how do they end up shooting people on their own goddamn property before they're shooting people that are burning fucking public buildings?
There you go.
And private establishments. Like like we're saying, there's more numbers now, but here they are. They're going out and they're shooting people on their own goddamn properties because apparently curfew means you need to be inside your own walls.
Yep.
But you can't be on your own property. You have to actually be inside an establishment. And if you're outside, they're going to just start popping off at you. Yeah. But if you're burning other people's businesses, they're not going to do jack fucking shit.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I don't understand. Like, none of this adds up anymore. Like, they completely just lost all my respect at this point. Like, it's just fucked up. I'm trying to follow the logic of how challenging it might be, but as I'm seeing it getting more and more challenging, I'm just like, holy shit, based on how the past few days just have gone, we're fucked. Because they're not going to do anything. But then all of a sudden they just start pushing back, and I'm like, this is what I've been thinking like this whole time. How do you not push back?
It was so easy.
As soon as they push back, they cave.
It was so easy that
it was so easy. So how do you go days without even trying to push back?
It broke them efficiently, and therein lies another question, not for the police themselves, but who's commanding them, and who's commanding them has to be Fry
That's
and
what
Walz.
I'm saying. Leadership. This is a fucking failure because they told them to stand down. They didn't want anything to happen.
They had to have. They had to have.
They publicly were saying that. They publicly were telling them they didn't want them to do anything.
Now that
and I saw something circulate too, but I don't even want to use that as evidence. I'm just going to take what I've seen in the press conferences. No, they didn't want anything to happen.
And
they wanted these people. They told them that they were justified in what they were doing. Like that's what they were saying. They're like, we understand you're angry. It's justified.
Yeah.
The police are going to stand down. So have at it on our city. They crazy. Said that on fucking TV.
Even during, and that shows, even during a fucking like quasi semi boogaloo, they're willing to pander still instead of just send out a tweet saying, "Hey, if you loot or riot, you're a fucking idiot. You're a That's why I said quasi."
Yeah.
But the fact that they're not going to tweet out say, "Hey, if you loot or riot, you're a fucking idiot," and if anybody who shoots looters and rioters are legally justified in doing so. The fact that they wouldn't even say anything remotely close to that, paraphrasing, of course.
Yeah,
it just shows you where their
Why didn't he call
are.
on a well-regulated state militia? Why didn't he call on the people? But then is he calling like
those things don't
is it a
exist
call
anymore.
of violence?
Those things don't exist anymore. There's no way the state in its modern incarnation would ever allow for a modern.
Norman Olson tried to start a militia in Michigan, I believe, and that got disbanded, and then he moved to Alaska. But that was like the last big one.
No, I know, and I'm just thinking of just armed citizens, like the ones that protected different establishments. Boom, there you go. I mean, that's the sort of well-regulated militia I can think of, is just responsibly armed citizens that can step in and do the right thing.
It's like the Eric July video, if you want to pull that up.
That's what the police force has usurped. The thought is that what happens if you implement what we saw tonight against the rest of the country's protesters? If you just mobilized military to back up the police, and the police were having at it, because they are having at it in places like Michigan and some places like I think New York's had a couple. I don't know, but if you actually implemented them and you didn't just let them off the hook, if you're prepared for them, how does this go? Because ours broke really damn easily tonight.
Yep. Well,
would Dallas break as easily? Because right now Dallas looks like it is absolutely destroyed.
It might depend on the people, but Minnesota, we're so passive. We really are. We're not aggressive types like this. And it's not like I'm speaking for every single individual in the whole fucking state, but it's not like I don't think that. Like, say when you go into Philadelphia and you bump into somebody in the street, like maybe you could get into it with them. And I only say that just because, like, if you're wearing a Vikings jersey and it's around the Super Bowl,
Philly fans are assholes.
Like, Philly fans are dicks. Like, you could, but you're not going to see that in Minnesota based on sports attire, as far as I've really ever seen. Like, I don't think you're ever going to get people violent like that. So it's just when you look at different cities and how people can get violent over sports. And you look at Minnesota, we're a bunch of pussies. So it should have been so easy to disperse all of this from the get-go. And if people kept going, then you're going to know something's up. The people that kept going are obviously not Minnesotans, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
Yeah, probably out-of-staters.
They're the out-of-stater white supremacists that they're talking about.
Hey, do you want to pull up that video I sent in the message?
It's fascinating to look at all this because there's a lot of questions now, and it goes far past the political sphere.
Facebook message.
We still haven't. there's questions about the state and its mandate on utilizing force in the form of a monopoly. There's the question about how really invested were these protesters in actually protesting a wrongful death of a man, or how invested were they in just trying to cause as much strain to the system as possible, because socialistic tendencies will come in if you have abject poverty and all those people who live in it can vote. What questions do we have to answer when it comes to why riots don't happen and there are white and Hispanic individuals who are killed by the state or state acting agents? Why don't we react when a black boy in Mississippi, where is his name? Where's his name being
selective moral outrage? They have to pick an incident.
Why this one? And why, with all of the platitudes, which can be useful, rhetoric can be useful, but if it's solely rhetoric without any constitution behind it, not the document, but just actually something foundational to back it up, like, say, an empirical set of data to make a particular point.
That's racist. Don't say that.
Oh, data's a point. Oh, dear. Those 13 over 50 memes will be coming out. Listen, I am more than willing to say, hey, the police will go after blacks disproportionately if the data suggests it. It probably does. I would even say
it doesn't actually.
Well,
only for drug offenses.
In certain
everything
things,
else, it really doesn't.
No, and that's
okay,
where I was first jumping to. It just depends on certain things. Well, I think there was one statistic that their deaths, like top 5 causes of deaths, 5th is by the hands of police or something for black people.
Which is weird. Because,
the number one cause of death, I think, for African American males 18 to 32 is being shot by other African American males or black males, and that's an entire question of the recidivism and the fatherlessness issue that's tied to it and all that other shit.
A lot of the left wants to introduce rhetoric. A lot of the right does it too. It's up to those who find themselves in the middle to be able to research empirical data, because obviously this stuff is recorded, and if anyone was really that curious, they'd seek it out. Unfortunately, we seem to have a populace which has no interest in anything other than the affirmation of their worldview.
Well,
exactly.
No, you're just looking at alternative facts, and you don't want to be looking at alternative facts.
Yeah, exactly. I can look up Obama era Department of Justice statistics for you, be able to just point out a lot of holes. Because what are you gonna fall back on? Are they gonna fall? Obama is white now? Are they gonna fall back
from? 2008 to 2016.
Yep, and he had Holder as head of the DOJ for I can't remember how many years.
Exactly. So you mean to tell me that a black president and a black attorney general are going to skew the numbers within the Department of Justice to be able to go against their narrative, I suppose? It seems counterintuitive.
Yeah, and Obama was the one who said, if I had a son, he would look like Michael Brown, right?
Yeah,
I think.
I believe that's what he said. So,
did he say that? What the fuck? I don't even remember that. Anyway, I'm gonna play this. We played this before.
No, it was Trayvon Martin. If I had a son, he looked like Trayvon Martin.
Oh, with George Zimmerman.
Yeah, we pulled this up the other day. People protecting their own shit. I mean, it makes sense.
Absolutely makes sense. The fun thing I always see though is black owned. I see black owned in the
right. That's
window.
all you gotta say now. Minority or black owned.
Just for you didn't really need to put that up in the windows. You had the guys with guns there. I think they can make the connection.
Oh, and that, yeah.
Social experiment. I would have loved to have had a building down there. I put white owned to see what would have happened.
just to draw in all the protesters, or well, not the protesters, but the looters or rioters of all races, and just fucking pop them off.
Listen, this is just a social experiment, and it's a perfect time to, because I'm a mad scientist like this. Have those signs like black owned, white owned, Hispanic owned, Hmong owned, Korean owned, and just place them in little places. And then as your controls, have all of the other businesses, and just see what they do.
Jarek, just set up a Gatling gun. Any looters or rioters of any color or race or ethnicity or nationality, just have it in the dark, camo it. Of course, you got to get your Hawaiian shirt on, night vision goggles, and then just fucking unload like Jesse Ventura in Predator. Just tear through that fucking jungle with a Gatling gun.
See, the issue is that's unethical. That'd be human lives at stake. At the very least, this is brick and mortar, right? This is just at least just brick and mortar, right? So
buildings don't matter anymore.
Buildings
you have to do a lot of drywall window work,
or what the economic impact of those particular places will be. And I'll say it, no skin off my back.
Consequences.
Oh, again, I'll say it. I'll say it for the world. There is no skin off my back as to what happens in South Minneapolis to those places. I can admit that and still ideologically be in a place I'm comfortable with, because I know what is going to happen. Because I have seen riots and how they affect the major metropolitan areas throughout human history. And I gotta tell you, it leads to a generation or two of some very extreme poverty. And in the case of Detroit, we're going on about generation 4. So that's it. That's all I have to contribute to it. I don't have a dog in the race. I'm just observing. I'm just laughing at all the people who pretend that they're Christ reborn, the great white savior of the black community, which they've never interacted with.
I'm gonna try to. I just try to offer them jobs, but they usually don't take it. So I don't know what else to do.
That's their choice.
Yeah.
I want to try to find that video of that one looter who got shot by John Ripple. Oh shit, there it is. But yeah, that'll be interesting to see what they do with that. Because I mean, that's if somebody really can't defend their private property.
What does that mean?
But yeah, Jesus, they were looting and rioting broad daylight today too. Just fucking didn't.
Broad daylight earlier.
It let up a little bit, but it was steady. I mean, we were listening to dispatch and everything, and fuck.
There's a bomb? Fuck. Wrong one. Still on? Alright, continue. Buildings destroyed. A nuclear... Okay, hold on.
Oh
yeah,
man,
that's the guy right there that got shot.
I don't care if you're recording
That's fucked up.
See, I don't feel bad for him if he was looting. If he was looting, then that's good that he died. Fuck him.
Mob throws Roxette man, chases him. Mob corners man, runs him down. Mob beats, kicks, curb stomps, and stones him in the head.
Win stupid prizes.
Yep.
Fucking idiot.
Just trying to look up this stuff. It's
yeah, dude. Too much happening at once.
fucking crazy.
And it harkens back as well to the 1619 project hitting the mainstream and buying into this thesis of all of this being a morally evil society.
Yeah.
And it's that worldview that this is all about. It's that particular worldview that's fueling these people to be zealots. And zealots at a church, essentially, that's akin to Catholicism or any other rabid religious institution that we've identified throughout history. This is their church. This is their cause and purpose. It is, incidentally, accelerationism plays right into the hands of who they deem to be their ideological opponents, which are the white supremacists who have been quite clear they want accelerationism into a conflict to finally resolve what they have asked as the minority question. So it's fucked. This whole thing is fucked that they're playing right into this kind of hand. And I don't know.
You nailed it, J. Rick.
It is all fucked.
Don't let that stop a good grifting from people to come out and rile people up and then to say, hey, donate to my Instagram as I pose beside this burning car just to look good. That's a whole nother topic of millennial and Zoomer revolutionaries, because I don't think they have fortitude on either side of the aisle right now to be revolutionaries. I think they have the fortitude to be disruptors, not revolutionaries in the sense that they want to dismantle a particular system. No, they've shown me that what they want is to usurp the current system at hand and utilize its coercive power to their own benefit.
Yeah.
Should we end it with that one?
I think that pretty much sums it up right there.
Don't trust grifters, kids.
No. Never. Yeah, we can end it on that.